Good morning, everyone. This is Mr. Shields back again with another video. If you remember last week, we went over the quadratic formula. We also went over factoring here in order to solve these quadratic equations. Both are good methods in order to solve these quadratic equations, but there's a third method that I want to show you here today. So if you take a look at this example here, x squared plus 4x minus 5, I wrote it again here, and I solved it using the two methods that we learned last week. By the way, if you haven't already done so, stop the video right now, finish those two lessons, then come back and actually play the rest of this video here. Now, I want to show you the third and final way that I'm going to show you how to do these problems here. So let me go ahead and get out of this screen here, and I'm going to go to our old friend Desmos, which can make life so much easier for us. So if I were to type in that equation, so I'm going to have x squared plus 4x minus 5. And so let me back up a little bit because I forgot my x, although a lot of people try to forget their x, but that's another story. Anyway, we'll see that graph. And if you remember the answers from the previous page here, we said that our x equals -5 and x equals 1. So we can use Desmos in order to graph these, and you can visually see your answers here. Now, what you're going to need for this particular lesson, if you're taking notes, ideally, you're going to want to have this paper here. I'm going to post a copy of that for you in student view, so that way you can kind of follow along with me. If you don't have a printer, you can just use regular notebook paper and write along all the same here with you. You'll see what we were talking about. So if I take a look, our topic today is dealing with quadratic roots. And there are several terms that mean the exact same thing. And I listed those terms for you: the zero, solutions, the x-intercepts here. So what we're talking about with the quadratic roots are the points at which the parabola intercepts the x-axis here. So for instance, if I take a look at this box here, now a parabola, you see my little U-shaped graph here, and it touches the x-axis here that I highlighted for you in pink. It touches it twice. So there are two solutions here. So like the previous problem that we looked at here on Desmos, it has two solutions. It crosses the x-axis twice. Sometimes your graph will actually just touch the one time, thus leaving us with one solution. Or the third and final case, sometimes that graph never touches the x-axis and you have no solution. All right, so let's go back to Desmos here, and we can see the graph already nice and neat for us here. And so once again, our answer, we're going to have -5 and +1. And so we can write that over here on the left side of my paper here. X equals -5 and +1. All right, that looks good. But what we're going to need to do is actually graph this. So how do I get my points here for the graphs? As you can tell, I've already actually written those out just in the interest of time here. But if you go back to Desmos here, and I hit this little key right here where it says Edit List, when you highlight over it, you'll be able to pull up a table function here. And that table will give you a set of points. Now, where do you start with filling out your table? If you'll notice here, I wrote the word vertex right smack dab in the middle here for this point at -2, -9. Now, what does that refer to? Well, obviously, as the name suggests, it refers to the vertex here. It's that middle point here of my parabola, -2 and -9. And so what I'm going to need is I'm going to need 3 sets of points below it, and I need 3 sets of points above it in order to graph my parabola here. And so if you look at the Desmos table here, I see my -2, -9, that's my vertex here. And then I can just go ahead and I would get my other points. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, it gives me the 3 points below it. How do I get the other points above it? So I'm going to go ahead and bring the screen over to the side here so you can kind of see what I did. So once I know my vertex, I just decided I was going to go one above it. So -3, -4, -5. So how did I get my y values, you ask? Well, with Desmos, you can actually just type it in, quite frankly. So if I want to have -3 be my x value, I know that -8 is going to be my y value. Same thing if I were to type in -4, -5 would be my y value, and so on. Now, you're probably going to see something that'll give you a nice little bit of a shortcut when I actually start to graph these, because you'll notice that these numbers repeat here, right? I have the 0 and 0, the -5 and -5, -8 and -8. And so that's going to correspond nicely to our graph when we go ahead and do that. So let's get right into the graph here. So I'm going to have -2, -9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, and I've graphed that. -1, -8. So that'll be here. 0, -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then finally 1, 0. So I've graphed or plotted half of my parabola. Now the other half is going to correspond to these points here. So let me go ahead and put my little checks here. So -3, -8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. See how that corresponds to that other point there? I don't know if that shows up too clearly on the screen, but oh well. -4, -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then finally -5, 0. And so then I have the other half of my parabola plot. And you'll notice that this graph or this parabola crosses my x-axis. Let me go ahead and highlight my x-axis here. It crosses it twice, all right? It crosses it at the -5, which is half of my answer, and it also crosses it at +1, the other half of my answer. So let's slide this up here. So I have number 2 here. I have x squared minus 2x plus 1. Once again, I've written out my table of values here just in the interest of time here. But I'm going to go ahead and clear this out. I'm going to type it in for you guys so you can see how that's going to look here. So I'm going to have x, hit my little square key down below, minus 2x plus 1. Okay. All right, so you'll notice this parabola actually touches our x-axis just the one time, all right? And so my answer would just be x equals 1 here, because it crosses the x-axis at 1. And there's also something special about that. Let me just go ahead and write in the answer x equals 1 just to start us off. But when I'm doing this, I also want to find my vertex. And my vertex also happens to be 1 here. In this case, it's 1, 0. So I want to put that right in the middle here of my table because I want 3 points above, I want 3 points below. So if I go into Desmos here, I'm going to hit that little circular key here, hit the data functions, and I'm going to be able to get my set of points. So 1, 0, we said, is the vertex. So I want the 3 points above it. So that's how I got 0, 1, -1, 4, -2, 9, and then the points below. And you can actually go down and type in the points, which is actually really cool, at least cool to me anyway. And then you have all of your points and you can graph them, and the points actually show up on the parabola as well. So let's just go about the process now of plotting our points and getting our parabola here. So we start here at the vertex, 1, 0. Then we're going to have 2, 1, 3, 4, and then 4, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we got that. And then we're going to have 0, 1, -1, 4, and then -2, 9. Okay, and then I can graph my parabola. Okay. But once again, my answer is actually where it crosses the x-axis. In this case, just 1. X equals 1. Final example of the day here. We've got a x squared plus 2x minus 3. So we can go ahead in Desmos and go ahead, type that in. So let's go make that happen. Clear this out. And so I have a negative x squared, and we have plus 2x minus 3. All right, so we have our graph or parabola here. And you'll notice this parabola does not cross the x-axis at all. So what would we say for an answer? Well, if it doesn't cross the x-axis, then we would just say no solution. Do I still have to graph it? You betcha. That's why I wrote the points down there for you guys. So once again, when I'm graphing it here, I want to find my vertex. That'll be my middle point here. My vertex just happens to be 1, -2. And so that's going to be my jump off point for where I'm going to plot my other points here. And so you notice on my table here, I already had that listed out for us, the 1 and the -2. And then we can go into Desmos and we can get our other values. And so once we do that, we know 1, -2 is our vertex. So we got the 3 above it. And then we can just type in, let's say we want 3, and we want 4. And now we have all of our points. And you'll see how the points correspond with each other. So it does make it a little bit easier when you're graphing here. So let me go ahead and graph our last example here. Starting with the vertex, 1, -2, 2, -3. How about 3, -6, 4, 5, 6. And last one, 4, -1. And this one's probably going to go off the graph from having graphed it earlier. And then now that we've got those out of the way, we'll have 0, -3. All right, so, and down here, so that corresponds with that. We'll have -1, -6. So that's going to correspond with that. And lastly, -2 and -11. And that's going to correspond nicely here. And once again, as I stated earlier, our parabola does not cross the x-axis this time. And so we're left with an answer of no solution here. All right, so make sure you go ahead and complete lesson 7 here for this week. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Ms. Watkins in our respective office hours here. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Bye.